It'd be very easy. So I say all this because Obama was super frustrated, rightly as he should be, because what was the whole election about? Deficits and jobs. Right. So he goes to the G20 summit and absolutely no one cared. And yeah, as Alex said, really nothing came out of this. But with one exception, to those who care about how the U.S. is portrayed overseas, it was an awful beating. The U.S. was just embarrassed. And it was because everybody, not just the Chinese, but also the Germans, said, you guys need to get your house in order. While he's over there saying we're going to get our house in order, we came out with this debt commission, which he established. You all probably know about that. So the debt commission's whole point was to reduce the deficit. So the deficit is going to be $1 trillion a year from this year through 2020. Which, by the way, in 2021, we're going to have a $3 billion surplus, just so you all know, in case you believe that. So while he was over there saying we're going to get this debt commission, they come out with the solution, which was really embarrassing for us and for him. He pointed out that, yeah, we're going to raise the retirement age for Social Security to 69. By the way, that takes effect in 2075, which is great. And we are going to cut $100 billion from the defense budget. So keep in mind, we've got a I think it's cumulatively a $13 trillion deficit from 2010, that's debt, and a 13 or so trillion dollar deficit from 2010, or debt totally accumulated, to 2020. And this debt commission was going to cut $4 trillion from that amount. So never actually going to cut the real full debt, but just cut $4 billion from what we're going to spend. And now Congress has said it's dead on arrival, that there's no way we will possibly make these egregious cuts, like raising the age of retirement in 2075 to 69. So essentially what that says to me is the U.S. is going to slowly go down as a second-rate country because there's apparently no political will to do anything about it. But what's also fascinating about that is just going into how stocks performed. In that time where our deficit has gone way up, where we've all realized we've got gridlock, in that time, NASDAQ, since its low in March of last year, is up 100%. Yeah. The S&P 500 is up 80%. And also interesting, if you look, there's this whole big concept going on now called risk aversion, where no one wants to be in U.S. stocks and blah, blah, blah. And yet, the wealthy, people who make who have assets over 5 million, their investments in private equity, which includes hedge funds and venture capital funds, has gone from, of the population in that sector, has gone from 37% who had that in 2007 to 52% of those groups who now have that, those types of investments, which is really, really weird. All we're hearing about how risky everything is, and yet the wealthy have way increased their exposure. And the only explanation, of course, I can think of is because there's really no income to be made if you're investing in treasury.
It's interesting, my friends that are both in the UK and Australia, they're buying US dollars right now. I'm not sure if you've noticed the Australian dollar lately, guys. It's a par, it actually went above the US dollar. This has never happened. This is a rarity. And then if you also look at what's going on with the Canadian dollar, again, popping up over the dollar, it's an amazing situation what's going on.
Yeah, and you know, like I said, Obama was just, it just sucks to be president, right? When nothing's going right. Obama was also criticized, and by the way, it's funny that the G20 is doing it, but the U.S., no one's thinking about this. But in 2012, the federal government, the Office of Management Budget, is saying the unemployment rate is going to be 6.1%.
How?
Yeah, of course that's bullshit, right? We all know that's bullshit. So the G20 minister said, why are you estimating your getting out of this hole based on those kinds of things? Because consider this, if we just add 100,000 jobs, which is about what we're doing per month, we'll maintain that level of where we are now, 9.6%. So we're supposed to go way above that. Another weird fact is we've added net to total people who are employed, 50,000 people we've added to the total employment pool from October 2009. And the problem is, which is why there's a problem with statistics in the federal government, 2 million people have reached employment age since that time. 2 million additional people in the U.S. But we've only added 50,000 people net to the workforce.
Yeah.
So there's clearly, it's not working. And we have, and by the way, lastly on this point, the reason why the G20 cares is because we are what's known as the reserve currency of the world. It's an incredible privilege. We were hoping, everyone is hoping that the euro would be that. And the euro is clearly fallen apart. It's not going to be a stable currency. So now it's the US. The Chinese own, I think, $2 trillion of US currency. Everyone asks, why do the Chinese own this currency? When you have $2 trillion of current account surplus, where can you put your money in a market neutral sense? You can't invest it in the stock market. So the only thing you can do is put it in US Treasuries. Because as bad as everything else is, the US does have some discipline. It's got a Federal Reserve that does have some discipline. But the G20 is looking at saying we're going to have to find a solution to get out of the US dollar unless the US can fix its fiscal problems. By the way, in all of this, keep in mind that the US is also looking at China as a potential enemy, right? It's this weird dichotomy. They're a big trading partner. They're also potentially, they're a frenemy. The Chinese have indicated that they're going to have 100 submarines by 2030 patrolling their area, the oceans in their area. The U.S. will have 26 subs, and so more and more the U.S. And by the way, the U.S. is spending $700 billion in defense, more than the next 15 countries combined. So we're not going to be able to keep that up. So the world is really changing, and all I can say is it sucks when your relative power in the world diminishes, and that's sort of where the United States is right now.
Well, I appreciate that.